Hey, stranger. You made it. Welcome to Tales of a Wanderer, a place where time folds, where reality and fiction dance by firelight, and the stars write their stories in silence. Here, you'll feel the joy, the mystery, the weight of forgotten legends. Stories that carry you through the past, anchor you in the present, and whisper toward the future. So rest your tired mind. Let the world slow down and make yourself at home. Your journey begins now.
There are stories that feel more myth than memory, but this one lived and bled through every frost-bitten footstep. His name was Slavomir Rawicz. Born of defiance, baptized by Siberian ice, and carried by unshakable will, he escaped a place no map dared name, a Soviet gulag buried deep in snow, silence, and secrets. It fell silently, blanketing the forest in a hush that made every step sacred. It was the winter of 1941. The wind could cut bone. The cold didn't whisper, it screamed, carrying the scent of pine resin and distant campfires long extinguished. Wrongfully accused of espionage, Rawicz found himself shackled in iron, his name erased, his freedom buried beneath layers of frost and despair. But within him, the flame did not go out. He watched the guards, studied their patterns, measured their steps. He waited, and one night, when the moon was hidden and the watch was drunk, he and 6 others disappeared into a white, so endless even memory struggled to follow. Their names faded, but their journey would not. The first days were swallowed by forest, by hunger, by blistered feet. They foraged moss, chewed on pine bark, melted snow for water. It fell silently, blanketing the forest in a hush that made every step sacred, and whispered songs of home to keep the wolves in their minds at bay. One man told jokes that barely landed, but the laughter was real. Another, a Lithuanian named Kolek, carved chess pieces from twigs and played games against himself under moonlight, just to remember he was human. They prayed to trees, to stars, to ghosts of their past. But they walked, always walked. Their boots, if you could call them that, unraveled after the first week. Rags were tied, feet bled, spirits wavered. Then, as if fate were testing them, came the Gobi, a land of dust and death, where their horizon shimmered like a lie. Water became legend. They followed mirages, licked dew from rocks at dawn, and collected beetles to roast over dying embers. It was here they met her, Christina. She did not speak of where she came from, but her eyes held storms. She walked beside them like a ghost made of grace. She carried a photograph of a boy, no older than 5. No words were needed. They understood. Christina smiled rarely, but when she did, even the sand seemed to still. They taught her games to pass the time. Finger riddles, memory chains, humming songs from forgotten cities. One night, under starlight, they roasted a desert lizard and pretended it was chicken. They laughed until they cried. The next morning, she was gone. Her body still warm, her face still peaceful. They buried her beneath stones and silence, but they kept walking. They had crossed the Gobi, but the worst had only just begun. An ocean of dust and silence where the sun bruised their skin and thirst became a memory with teeth. Beyond the dust and dunes waited the Himalayas, those jagged white gods watching from the heavens, merciless and magnificent. Not a mountain range, but a white wall of gods. Each step was no longer a choice, but a whisper of defiance. By now their faces were hollow with hunger, ribs like the keys of a broken piano, but they had survived the impossible. And so they climbed. No gear, no ropes, no map, just tattered boots, frozen breath, and hope burning on fumes. They burned tree bark for warmth, sucked snow for water. One night, they found a cave. Inside, a frozen goat, ancient and still. They cooked it over slow flame and swore it was the best meal of their lives. Rawicz remembered the taste for the rest of his days. Tough, wild, divine. In the silence of ice, stories became currency. They told tales of home, of lovers, of cities that hummed, of mothers who sang. They played imaginary games, a bakery owner placing bets with a poet about sunrise, a soldier teaching tango steps to a farmer with frostbitten toes. Even hallucinations became companions. One man, Michal, spoke nightly to a shadow he called Anna. No one questioned him. Anna became part of them. As they climbed, oxygen thinned. They would sleep for minutes, walk for hours, dream while awake. In the moments between reality and snow-blind haze, they imagined fires, feasts, and foreign lands. They carried each other, sometimes physically, always emotionally. When Kolek collapsed, Rawicz gave him his only dry sock. When Michal went blind in one eye from frostbite, the pain wasn't just physical. It gnawed at hope, eroding the will like wind erodes stone. They tied themselves together with rope made from shirt sleeves. It was not strength that carried them. It was love. Not loud, not poetic, but quiet, raw, feral love for one another, for life, for the dream of seeing trees that weren't made of ice. Then, after 5,000 kilometers, 11 months, and 7 souls, India. The land where color returned to their vision and the air finally tasted of freedom. The land of color, heat, and light. They fell into the arms of astonished villagers, not as survivors, but as legends. Doctors said they should not be alive. But there they were. Slavomir Rawicz would live a long life. Now thinner, older, but somehow larger than life. Walked as though carrying the souls of every man who had fallen. He would write his story. Many doubted its truth. But those who've walked through storms know truth often wears the coat of myth. He never spoke much of Christina, nor of Anna. But on quiet nights, when fire danced and wind whispered, he'd close his eyes and smile, as if the ice still whispered their names. We do not know what Slavomir Rawicz saw in the final days of his walk. No one recorded his first breath of Indian air. No one counted the steps across that invisible border, where chains vanished and color returned to the sky. But we can imagine. We can imagine the taste of warm food, heavy with spices he'd long forgotten, existed. How it must have lit his mouth like sunrise after eternal dusk. We can imagine how a clean bed, soft, motionless, may have made him weep like a child. Perhaps he tried to write it down, to explain frostbite of the spirit, the kind that doesn't heal in the sun. Or maybe he stayed quiet, knowing the truth would sound more like myth. People questioned his tale, called it exaggeration, fiction, fantasy. But the wind across the Gobi does not lie. The creak of old leather boots still echoes in Himalayan silence. He never forgot his friends, the ones who fell asleep in snow and did not wake. He whispered their names like prayers, each syllable a heartbeat, softer, emotional pause. And when he closed his eyes at night, perhaps he still saw a single trail of footprints stretching across an ocean of white silence. We do not know what became of Slavomir, but we know what he became to us, a whisper in the frost, a myth among mountains, a man who chose freedom, even if it meant dying for it. This is how legends walk. This is why the ice still whispers his name.
And so, another tale finds its rest. Thank you, traveler, for walking beside me tonight, for listening, for feeling, for remembering. Until the next path opens, take care, sleep well, and I'll see you in the next story.